December 1948. The Second World War had just ended, and people had begun flying actively as aviation had become more accessible. In those years, the legendary Douglas DC-3 ruled the skies, a reliable passenger aircraft that was considered the workhorse of civil aviation. But it was one of these planes, on a regular flight from Puerto Rico to Miami, that entered history as yet another unsolved mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. On the calendar, December 28, 1948. San Juan, the capital of Puerto Rico. The small airport is buzzing with life. Passengers bustle about, preparing for the journey. Some tourists snap photos, while others hurry to check in their luggage. The aircraft NC-16002, a Douglas DC-3, belongs to Airborne Transport and is scheduled to depart around 10 p.m. local time. On board are 32 passengers and a crew of 3. The captain of the plane was Robert Linton, an experienced pilot with thousands of flight hours. His co-pilot, Robert Linston, was younger but already well-trained. The third crew member was the flight engineer. San Juan Airport was small but atmospheric. Inside the waiting hall, there was a sense of anticipation before the journey. People were chatting, children laughed, and a few passengers read newspapers. The plane was scheduled to fly a simple route from Puerto Rico to Miami. It was about a 3-hour flight. The weather at the time was relatively calm, a light wind, some clouds, but no severe storms. Air traffic controllers noted that the route was standard and safe. The Douglas DC-3 was considered one of the most reliable aircraft in the world. No one could have imagined that this flight would become the last for dozens of people. At 10:03 p.m., the plane lifted into the air. The engines ran smoothly, and the cabin lights pierced the night darkness. Passengers looked out the windows at the twinkling lights of San Juan, which quickly disappeared into the distance. Inside the cabin, it was quiet. Some tried to doze off, while others shared their plans for the trip. The atmosphere was almost idyllic. The pilots reported their takeoff to the controllers, and the communication was perfect. The first 2 hours passed calmly. The plane was flying at an altitude of about 800 meters at cruising speed. The crew periodically made contact, reporting that the flight was proceeding normally. Controllers in Miami received a signal, "We are approaching. Everything is fine." The estimated time of arrival was around 1:30 a.m. But then, the first difficulties began. At 4:13 a.m., controllers in Miami received the last clear message from the DC-3 crew. "We are 50 miles from Miami. We can see the lights of the coastline." It was nearly the point of arrival. Passengers were probably gathering their belongings, some waking up from a nap. They were confident they'd be on the ground in 20 minutes. But something happened. Within minutes, the signal began to fade. The radio connection grew weaker and then cut off entirely. No SOS signal, no coordinates, just silence. The controllers in Miami were sure the plane would appear on the horizon any moment. But minutes passed, and the DC-3 never showed up. They tried again and again to establish contact, to no avail. Half an hour later, it became clear something had happened. But how could that be when the plane was literally just minutes away from landing? At dawn, the U.S. Navy began a search operation. Several aircraft were deployed, and boats headed out to sea. The search lasted for a week. They scoured the coastline, the ocean waves, even small islands along the flight path. But nothing. No wreckage. No fuel stains. No evidence that the plane had crashed. It was as if it had simply disappeared into the air. By the time the first phase of the search ended, authorities and relatives were left with only questions. How could a plane, already in sight of the Miami coastline, suddenly disappear? Flight DC-3 disappeared just minutes before landing, leaving nothing but empty sky and ocean behind. The search yielded no results. Historians, pilots, and mystery enthusiasts began to consider possible causes. The Douglas DC-3 was a reliable aircraft, but it had its weak points. Issues with the fuel system, freezing instruments at altitude, sudden engine failures. If the plane had encountered one of these malfunctions, the pilots would have had limited time to react. The crew might have attempted an emergency water landing, but the night, the waves, and the lack of visibility made that nearly impossible. At the time of the disappearance, the weather was calm, but in the Bermuda Triangle, it can change in an instant. Light cloud cover could have created an illusion of the coastline being closer. Ocean currents and the night's darkness might have thrown the pilots off course. Even a small error in measuring speed and direction in the dark could have led to complete disorientation. The most likely cause was a simple navigational error. The pilots may have misjudged the wind speed and the distance to the coastline. The compasses showed the course, but even a small deviation of a few degrees at altitude and in the dark could cause the plane to pass the shore or get lost over the ocean. Because of this mistake, the DC-3 flight, which had already seen the lights of Miami, could have actually been dozens of miles out at sea. In a critical situation, the pilots had to make decisions in an instant. Stress, darkness, and disorientation could easily lead to panic. Captain Linton likely tried to remain calm, giving precise commands to the co-pilot and the flight engineer. But the human mind has its limits. Even experienced pilots can make mistakes when all they see is the ocean around them and nothing they can confidently identify. The morning of the next day, the search continues. Military aircraft patrol the routes. Ships comb the vast ocean, sending signals and trying to locate any wreckage. A week of searching passed in vain. No plane, no passengers. This operation became one of the first large-scale search and rescue missions in the Bermuda Triangle. The disappearance of the DC-3 served as a wake-up call for aviation. Even reliable aircraft require careful monitoring and precise navigational calculations. The story is a reminder. The ocean is vast and unpredictable, and humans are limited by technology and their own capabilities. The DC-3 flight is yet another mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Technical malfunctions, navigational errors, and crew disorientation are the most plausible explanations, but the mystery remains. The following videos will continue the series of mysterious stories from the Bermuda Triangle.